possibility I might be doing 2 presentations if there's more people that come in later. But, and thank you, AJ, for bringing me here. Oh, he's back there. Okay, so my plan, since it's a kind of a small crowd, is to keep this sort of organic tonight. I'm going to share my story with you, and then I'm actually going to have you guys do some interaction with each other. So I'm going to have you choose a partner to hang out with and talk with for a bit. I'll throw out some discussion questions. It'll be fun discussion, not like, you know, schooly or education-y, if that's a word. And then I'm going to share my talents with you today. I'm going to sing a song called the Shine Medley, and it's a medley of a couple 1950s songs mixed with my own songs that I wrote, all put together. And then I'm going to dance for you. So it's going to be fun. All right, so I was born in Tacoma, Washington with partial limbs. And when I was born, they didn't do routine ultrasounds, so my parents didn't really have the chance to prepare mentally for having a child with partial limbs. And it was too much for them. They had some financial issues and some personal issues, and so they chose to give me up for adoption. But destiny came into play, and I was adopted by my parents, who are amazing people. Their story is basically that they got married and they wanted to have 10 kids. And they tried for about 7 years and were not able to conceive a child. So they went and saw a fertility specialist, and they said, this probably isn't going to happen for you. So they went through the options, and they decided to adopt. And when they adopted my brother Jeff, he was born with Down syndrome. And they didn't realize that he was going to be born with Down syndrome. The doctor told them, if you'd like to try for another adoption, you can. And they said, nope, he's our baby, and we're taking him home. And so after having him for about a year, they just realized how rewarding it was to be providing a home for a child with special needs who probably would have ended up just getting rotated in the foster care system. And so they felt a calling that they wanted to continue to adopt children with special needs. And so it was kind of cool how destiny played, because when I was born, they had 2 weeks earlier called the adoption agency and said, we would like to be available to either foster or adopt a child with special needs. If you need us, call us. And 2 weeks later, I was born. So they only had to make one call to my parents, and it was all said and done. And so I consider myself their good luck charm, because when they adopted me, 2 years later, they had my brother Andy, biologically. And then 3 months after they gave birth to Andy, they got pregnant with my sister Becky. And that was like, what is going on here? And so they have 2 children biologically. And then when I was 6 years old, we adopted my brother Paul. He also has Down syndrome. And it was us 5 for a really long time. And when I was 13 years old, we adopted a sibling set of 3 who all have the same mom. They were 5, 6, and 7 when they came into our home. And they came out of foster care, and they have a genetic condition that causes some disabilities. And so it was 8 of us total in the family. And one of the greatest things that my parents did is that they advocated for our education. They really took on the role of having children with special needs, and they made sure that we were empowered, that we were independent, and that we were set up for success in life. And I'm really, really thankful for that. One of the things they had to do early on in my life was advocate for me to be put in public schools in the mainstream classes. In 1986, when I went off to kindergarten, the ADA had not been passed yet, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act. I don't know how many of you know what that is, but it's a series of laws that protects people with disabilities and their rights to live a full and happy life and have equal rights to jobs, schooling, and housing and all the things that you need to live well. And so there was the 1973 Rehabilitation Act, which had a very small clause, Clause 504, which stated that all children with special needs were to be educated in the public schools. My public schools at that time, the school that I was being put into, did not adhere to that law. So when they went to sign me up for kindergarten, the principal said, "I'm sorry, but she's not going to be able to attend school here." And my dad said, "I'm sorry, but she is, because we know the law, and you're supposed to be educating children with special needs." They were sending all the children with special needs to a separate school, where it was basically glorified babysitting. My parents went and checked it out. They hired a lawyer, they shut that school down, and transferred all the kids from that school into public school. My parents kind of single-handedly, with a group of parents, started special education in my hometown. And so they really fought for me to be put into the mainstream classes. They constantly, in the schools, were wanting to put me in special education, which they knew, because I'm smart, at least so they say, that they wanted me in mainstream classes where I could thrive. So I'm very thankful for that. One of the things I did experience going through school, especially middle school and high school though, was being teased. And I think a lot of that was that I was usually the only student in a wheelchair at least, or with a disability in the classrooms. And especially in the middle school years is when it really got really bad. And so that was a time in my life that my self-esteem was really, really low. And it was kind of a constant inundation of negativity, and I remember just being really scared to go to school, and school felt like a war zone to me. But one thing that kind of helped me rise above all of that was knowing what I was good at. And that's something that my parents were really awesome at, was recognizing our gifts and talents and really cultivating them. So I showed an aptitude for singing and dancing and anything that had to do with being a diva really early on in my life. And so my parents picked up on that, and when I was 6 years old, they started me in voice lessons. And when I was 8 or 9, I started doing talent shows on stage. In my middle school, high school years, I did theater and musical theater and performing, and just cultivating those gifts and talents really helped me remain, at least with some confidence, intact during those years of being teased. And I also had a big dream that started early on in my life. I remember my parents tell me this story all the time. I was 4 years old, and they took me and my siblings to a rodeo, and somehow I ended up missing. They were looking around for Jenny, and they said that they found me by hearing me over the loudspeaker. I had hopped away from them out of my wheelchair and had hopped up the stairs to the announcer's stand and had tapped on the announcer's knee, because that's how little I was, and I said, "I want to talk on the microphone." So he had put me up on a stool and was having me talk into the microphone, and was telling me what to say. And so I was announcing the rodeo, and the things that my parents said was that I sounded like a grown-up, not a child. And so they kind of saw that aptitude for microphones and public speaking, and that was something, right, even then, my dad was like, he said it out loud, "She's gonna be in public speaking or something when she grows up." So those dreams really started to become real when I was in middle school. I remember I was very inspired by the inspirational speakers that would come into school and talk to us. And I just remember being like, I want to do that when I grow up. So my first taste of like real public speaking was when I was 16 years old. And I spoke in front of 2,000 youth at a youth conference in Seattle, Washington. And it went so well. I was scared out of my mind, only 16. But I remember it went so well, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is what I am made for. This is my destiny. So I kind of just set my mind on that track that public speaking was in my future. I went to Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, Washington, and I had an amazing experience there. It was the exact opposite of my school years. It was a place of acceptance and inclusion. and positivity. There had been a lot of teachers prior to me arriving there that had fought for equality on campus. Everything was wheelchair accessible. All the classrooms were inclusive. I wasn't the only student with a disability in the classrooms. And they never emphasized my disability. It was a very wonderful experience. I had hundreds of friends, and I was constantly being told what I was good at, and being mentored and befriended, and it was a very uplifting experience. And what I experienced in those 4 years was basically a removal of the hurtful words and a healing of those hurtful words. And I was no longer in a war zone. I was in a positive, healing place. And I got involved with campus ministry there, and that was a huge part of that experience also. And so my dreams started to take shape during those years. And I actually started doing some light public speaking in my community at that time. After I graduated from there, I went on and got a degree in radio broadcasting, and then I got a master's degree in counseling. And during those years between about 2002 and to about yesterday, no, I'm just kidding. From 2002 till about 2009 was a really, really, really challenging time in my life. I would say it was equally as challenging probably as the teen years. I was barely making it financially. I was working part-time and going to school, and I lived in bachelorette pads. It was the only thing I could afford. I don't know if any of you have ever lived with more than one woman at a time, but it was total insanity. And I'll never do it again. But at the time, it was what I needed to do. And so it was a time of a lot of turmoil in my heart, a lot of I guess I would say that the waters were choppy during that season in my life. And I remember I had this one day that I was on a walk, and I was by myself, and I just felt frustrated, and I was just like, I thought my dreams were supposed to come true, you know? Like, I thought I was supposed to grow up and be something like really incredible. And right now, I'm poor, and I'm living in a chaotic, crazy place, and like, what's happening with my life? And I just remember feeling like, is that ever going to happen, kind of a thing. And I remember I was trying to do some things, and like the doors just kept closing. But in that moment, I got really stubborn, and I said, I'm not going to quit until I see my dreams come true. Like, I'm just not. Until they happen, I said, I don't care if I have to live like 1,000 more days without anything happening. Like, I'm just going to keep going. And that was probably in about 2006. In 2009, I graduated with my master's degree. And in 2010, I started working as an independent contractor in the public schools in Tacoma, Washington, advocating for the inclusion model of education. And that experience is what set me up to do what I'm doing now. I would go to the schools and I would talk to them about the power of inclusion and how they should be taking special education and integrating them into the mainstream classes. And I was part of a team that helped schools transition from the former model of education into the inclusion model of education. And I did that for about 2.5 years. And then I got laid off from that job, which at the time felt really awful, but it opened the door for me to start my motivational speaking business. So in 2011, I started my motivational speaking business basically from ground zero. My sister and I built a website, I got some business cards, and I started making calls in the local schools. They already knew who I was, so I started speaking at assemblies, and that's when I started my anti-bullying campaign, The Power of Words. And I know from firsthand experience the power that words have. Words have metaphysical power, the words that you speak to each other, to yourself, and the words that come out of you have metaphysical power. There's actually been scientific studies that have shown where they've had like 2 rooms of plants that are in the same nurturing environments, in the sense like the same soil, the same amount of water, the same amount of fertilizer, all that. But one side of the plants, they like yell at them and like they're mean to them, and they play like really loud death metal music with like these like horribly violent lyrics. And on the other side, the plants are like talk to you kindly, and they're like spoken love over, and then they play classical music. And the plants that are in the same conditions as the other plants with the crazy yelling and the yucky music, they die. They flat out die. And the other plants are like green and supple and growing and happy. So if plants react to hurtful words like that, how much do our souls react to that? And so that's the message that I share with youth all over. Well, it started in Washington. In 2013, I felt like it was my year to do something new and adventurous. I had gotten connected with the Miss Wheelchair Washington program, and I ran for Miss Wheelchair Washington in 2013. I had been building my anti-bullying campaign for about 2 years at that point. Prior to winning the title, I'd been working in advertising. And so I won that title. And 6 weeks after I won the title, I had so much business that I quit my advertising job. Yes, it was such a wonderful experience. I'm so happy because I mean I liked my job, but I really just wanted to do motivational speaking full time. And then I ran for the national title in July of 2013, and AJ was one of the judges. And they voted that I would be Miss Wheelchair America, and it was like the single most amazing moment of my life, having the crown put on my head. And I just like welled up with so much joy and excitement for the year. I had been really, really wanting the opportunity to take my anti-bullying campaign nationally, and my motivational speaking business. And so when I won that title, it opened a whole door to traveling the nation. For the last 10 months, I've been home, or been gone more than I'm home. I think I'm gone 3 months, or 3 weeks, and then home for a week. It's the usual routine. I've been to, I think I counted like 27 or 28 cities in the United States in 10 months. I've been adaptive surfing and adaptive skiing. I've broken through so much fear. Anxiety and fear has been something I've struggled with my whole life. It started early on when I was about 7 years old. I started getting huge panic attacks. And when I first started this year, it was scary when I would go stay in hotels and like travel by myself or even with somebody. And I went through I guess it was very tumultuous at first, but the more that I continued to just keep going, like so much fear has broken off of me this year. The person that I am sitting here in front of you isn't even the same person that I was a year ago. I've grown in confidence. My dreams are coming true before my eyes. I published a book this year called Dreams Come True, which really reaches out to young people, and it talks about the power of words. It's kind of a scrapbook of my life. I have another book that I wrote during my year while I was traveling. Every event I would go to, I would blog about it, and then I would write in my book. And every event just inspired me more and more the message that I wanted to share with young people. So this next book is called Discover Your Identity. It should be published in the fall. That's the goal, because I want to start promoting it in schools in the fall. And it takes young people on a journey. First my story, and then takes them into their stories through questions and kind of a workbook form. And so that's going on. This year, as I've traveled, I've learned so much about traveling in a wheelchair. So somebody gave me the idea, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to write a travel guide for people in wheelchairs traveling in the United States, which hotels to stay in and how to work through the airplane situation and all that. And basically, I pass on my crown in August, which is bittersweet. I am going to be pretty sad to not be able to wear my sash and crown anymore. But I'm really excited for what's up ahead. I'm going to keep traveling. I'm going to keep promoting my motivational speaking business. And I'm going to keep writing books. The bigger visions that I have, the dreams that haven't come true yet, I want to start a nonprofit. And the nonprofit, I want to reach out to people with disabilities through building group homes that provide like genuine good care, basically. A lot of group homes don't provide good care. There's a lot of people living in group homes that are being abused or just kind of not doing a lot with their life. So I want to build group home communities that are purposeful and eventful and filled with community activities and travel. Because I think a huge part of living a full life is being adventurous. So we will take them on cruises and adventures and take them out of their comfort zone, because that's what has changed in my life, and I want them to experience that too. So that's one of my visions for the nonprofit. The other is to either start or support orphanages in third world countries. I specifically really have a heart for children with special needs in countries where their needs aren't being met. So I have the whole adventure of starting a nonprofit ahead of me, which is not easy, but it's going to happen. And then my long-term goal is to be a network television talk show host. So I want to have some sort of contract with like NBC or ABC or Fox or something like that, and just kind of share what I'm sharing now, and promote good things that are happening in the world and share my story with the world. So those are just some of the dreams that I'm looking forward to happening in the next 10 to 20 years. So that's my story. And actually right now, if you have any questions for me about anything I just shared that you'd like me to go in more depth, please. You guys are like one of the quietest audiences.
How do you travel? You travel alone?
I do.
How? Tell me about that.
I am willing to ask for help, but I've just kind of figured out an efficient system of traveling. So through trial and error, I've learned what I need to say to the airlines to make sure that they take care of my chair well. They put me on the airplane with a, what is it called? Like an aisle chair. So it's like a teeny wheelchair that and I know how it works. I just know now that I've done it a lot. And I figured out something that's a pretty cool thing. This is really something I want people to know. Every city has a paratransit system, which is those shuttles that drive around with the wheelchair lift. And it's there to help people who are less efficient taking the bus. And so I'm eligible for paratransit in Tacoma, and all I have to do is fax them my eligibility to wherever I'm going, and then I'm eligible for paratransit in that location. So it's basically a very inexpensive taxi that will pick me up door to door and take me where I need to go. And every major city has them. Some rural cities don't, but most of them do. And so that's how I get around. And I know which hotels to stay in. The middle of the road ones are the most accessible. So I stay in like Holiday Inns and Hiltons and Best Westerns, because they're usually newer built. So yeah, I just figured it out. And then if I need help, I ask.
And how do you finance it? I mean,
how do I finance it?
Yeah,
you said?
Your travel.
Well, I've gotten a lot of generous donations through the Miss Wheelchair America Foundation, and I've been selling my books. So that's been one of the main ways that I've been earning my travel money. So please buy my book today. Shameless plug. And I actually have art cards. So you can check them out as soon as I'm done singing and dancing for you. They're prints of my art with motivational sayings that come from my own talk. So it's all original, and I'm selling those for $8 and the book for $15. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
I had a question. With the bullying, a lot has changed now with the internet, the cyberbullying and everything like that. It's so different. What would you say to kids now who are dealing with that kind of bullying?
Well, I talk about that a lot when I go to schools. I talk about texting, and I talk about Facebook and Instagram and all of that. And I let kids know that whatever you put on the internet is permanent. Mm-hmm. So if you put something that's putting someone down, that is forever there. You can kind of delete it, but once you put it out there, it's in cyberspace somewhere. And so, and I say that it's also the same way with our hearts. When you say something hurtful, it can remain there for years and years. And it takes a lot of, I mean, I know for me, it's taken me many years and a lot of positive words to erase the negative words. And sometimes they're still there, you know. It's something that can mark you for the rest of your life. And so I talk about the permanence of once you say something, or put something on Facebook or text it or whatever, that it has power and it becomes a permanent thing. It's not just a joke, it's not just something in passing. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Could I ask you,
Yeah.
how do you, because obviously you face a lot of challenges, but how did you bring yourself from your darkest moment to your most positive moment? How do you get there?
That's good. A lot of it has to do with my faith in God, and just believing in something bigger than myself. And love. I mean, the power of love is huge. I would say the encouragement from community that I've experienced has become kind of a rescuing power in my life, where, you know, people have seen me in that dark place, and they, through their words and encouragement, have pulled me out of that. And some of it is just sheer determination and will, too. There's only so much people can do for you, but I've made a choice to rise above the challenges and to persevere. That's a huge word, is perseverance. I mean, there are sometimes that you literally just have to live each day until it gets better. And that's kind of, I mean, that's some of my story. Was there were some really crappy days, you know, and it was just keeping that dream alive and continuing to move forward until things got better, and believing that it would, having hope for the future. So, yeah. Anybody else?
Bullied?
Yeah.
Are you still bullied?
Adult bullying is a little more sophisticated.
Good answer.
I don't know. I think now I have such strong confidence that I don't know. It's like I mean, in my adult life, I have experienced the sophisticated bullying of, especially in the work environment, which is why I love being self-employed. But in the work environment, I definitely experienced a lot of like the pecking order situation, and, you know, sort of like that I'm in dominance over you, so I'm gonna, you know, oppress you. And so I've experienced some of that type of oppression. And yeah, I've experienced just some flat out mean people, which they exist in the world, you know. You can't really avoid that. It's just part of life. So, yes. But I would say that I have a much stronger sense of self than I did in middle school to be able to move past those situations. Come on in.
Come on in.
Thank you so much for coming. Grab a seat.
When you went to college, did you stay in a dorm, or were you still at home?
I lived in the dorms. I haven't lived at home since I graduated from high school.
Now, did your parents give you wings?
They gave me wings. They said, go out and get them. They said, don't ever come back here. No, I'm just kidding. No, they really did. It was my dad that had a hard time letting go. He's kind of more the nervous Nelly, the worrier. My mom's like, go. Like, you know, they both knew that I had big dreams, and I was not going to achieve them in Podunk, Chehalis, Washington. I grew up in a town of about like 150,000 people, maybe less. It's a small little farm town, so there really isn't a lot of opportunities. So they were very, very supportive of me going out and learning the ropes. I remember I was extremely homesick in college, and I called, and I was like, I just want to quit and come home. And they're like, nope, you're not coming home. Like, you got to finish college. And so the first couple of weeks were hard. I was very homesick. And probably the first semester was really hard. But then I started making friends, and it became one of the best experiences in my life. So, yeah, that's what I love about my parents. I think because they're adoptive parents, they don't, a lot of parents that have children with special needs feel really protective of their children, and there's a little bit of guilt there. And I mean, that's just part of parenting. I think every parent feels that way, honestly. But I think my parents, they took on the role of like raising children with special needs, and so they like went to all these classes and read a ton of books and really like put their whole heart into making sure that we were independent. And so they really encouraged us to leave the nest. I still have 2 siblings at home, my brothers Paul and Jeff, who have Down syndrome, and my parents still are, you know, overseeing their care. But they are working full time, they have vibrant social lives. They're not home that often. And so even with their children that are home, they're constantly pushing them out of the house, like go, live life, you know? So I'm really thankful for that. It's really given me the ability to be independent. And they're not like overbearing or anything. And I'm thankful for that. So it's great.
They sound like beautiful people.
Huh?
They sound like beautiful people.
They are. They're the
Should be
salt of
proud.
the earth, pretty much. But they don't like any kind of public recognition. They're very introverted people. So I get to brag on them everywhere I go, but like when people try to interview them for like the newspaper or like people have called them and said, we know your daughter's Miss Wheelchair America, they like hang up on them. they don't want any sort of like public recognition. So
What special advantages do you have?
what special advantages do I have?
Yeah.
I'm going to share those with you in a moment. But I would say connecting with my gifts and talents has been what has helped me rise above my challenges. I always say that I have one disability but many abilities. So my disability is that I have partial limbs, and my abilities are that I can sing and dance and public speak and run a business and be a good friend and communicate well. I'm a strong leader, and I have a strong sense of self. All of those things overtake the disability. And actually the next book that's being published right now, I have a quote in there that says that my heart can do much more than my arms and legs ever could. So that's kind of how I live my life.
Cool. I don't know exactly how to ask this or get it out, but so help me as I struggle a little bit. Is there a gift in the way you look at society and what's going on? Your perspective as you look at life and you look at the so-called normal thing that's in my head. Do you understand what I'm trying to get to?
Do you mean like societal perceptions of people with disabilities, or just like what?
Well,
what
let me put it a different way, and I don't mean to do this. I've got an issue, a health issue,